All right. I mean, the first thing with Joe is that his was the first person,
Hmm.
or yeah, first person. So I don't know if it was just me, and it's weird because well, what's weird is like I think I found him the hardest to relate to, but
Mm.
I'm probably more like him than I am the other characters,
What's that
and I
about?
don't. What was that?
What's that about? Why is he the hardest one to relate to?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to dissect that now. I mean, like maybe. I mean, he's doing the best he can with the circumstances he's in, right? I was gonna say maybe it's just because he's like uh such a he's I don't know, he's at the bottom of the totem pole, but like, I'm not in charge of anybody. I'm kind of at the bottom. Like, so it's not that. It's not like he's making bad decisions. He's actually making awesome ones. He is savvy enough to shuffle aside money to buy extra food, and I also really really loved like the way that he finds happiness in his shit life by like loving his animals
Hmm.
and giving them the best lives they can right up until they're massacred.
Hmm.
But he seems to draw genuine pleasure from it. Like it's not like he's just doing it out of a sense of duty, right?
No, I think he really cared about him. I thought he felt like the most agentic of all of them. I mean, what's his name? Marcus
Marcus.
Harris. But it's easy for him to be agentic because he has money and power. And I think Joe, for being like this no status guy, really did shuffle things around to try to make his little corner of the world as good as he could make it. And like the few things that he did have control over, he used his power for good. And he did have kind of some longer term thinking, even though he was like, okay, I'm going to like cook the books to make sure that I can skim off the top and feed my friends and feed my animals, but I'll probably get caught eventually, but I have a plan for that too. I felt like he was actually the one who was sort of like, I don't know, agentic just kept coming up. Everybody else was fighting fires, or at least Andreas really did not seem to be. He just seemed to be reacting, and Joah seemed to be trying to. He was also just trying to survive, but yeah, he just felt like he was more in charge of his stuff. I don't know. I liked him. I felt like he was the easiest one to relate to.
No, that's awesome. I don't know where my disconnect was with him, but no, you're absolutely right. Like I think there's probably something to be said for the fact that like other than I guess helping stop the end of the world or whatever, his decisions and his agency were more confined like locally. Like he didn't have as sweeping of an impact. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that made him more agentic because, like you said, it's easy to have agency when you have money and power. Like Marcus was able to push the fate of Rome right with his wallet and his plans.
Right. You just say like make it so, and then send people out to do whatever.
Exactly, but like Joe is the one. He's at the bottom of the totem pole. There's no one that he can order around to take a punch for him or whatever. Man, the two sides of Titus.
Eek. That
Right.
guy was.
That's the perfect noise for him.
um,
That fucking
he
guy.
Yeah, that guy, he was the monster the whole time when he was like, I need a monster. I'm like, well, there's one right there. um he I thought he was interesting because I think he's the only character, Titus, who really interacted with all three of them. Is that right?
Marcus did. I mean, they
I mean, Titus interacted with Marcus. He was like the boss of Andreas. I guess they didn't really interact, but he had to like report to him, and he teamed up with them for the thing in the slums.
yeah, totally.
And then Joah, and he behaved differently in all three of those situations. And so he was like this weird, super influential shadow character who wasn't actually one of the three things that the story was about, but he still had a lot of influence on the story and a very
Yeah,
satisfying ending.
exactly. No, I was going to say that too. No, but you are about the ending, but that's a really good point. Like he was the thread between all of them, and he did present a different face to every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
To Marcus, he was like, "Oh no, I'm the loyal supplicant," and I follow orders, and I was good friends with your son or whatever. And with Andreas, he's coldly calculating, badass mercenary, and then with Joah, he's this sociopathic, you know,
Super
rapist
bully.
monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, super bully is a good way to put it. I remember talking about this with Wes, and he didn't quite recall. He crucified an orangutan or something, didn't he?
He did.
Okay,
Yep.
good. I knew that wasn't. I was hoping that wasn't just my imagination.
No,
Don't
I'm
know.
pretty
That
sure it
would
was
say
an
about my
orangutan.
imagination.
It was definitely a crucifixion. And yeah, he just came in and found one of his animals, like not just murdered, but like, yeah, tortured and displayed. That guy was a sicko. It is also interesting that every time I see something a mark of, I guess, how we feel about Eneasz. But every time I see something noble and good and thoughtful, I'm like, oh, you can totally tell Eneasz wrote this. And then when I see like horrors and atrocities, it doesn't even cross my mind to say like, oh, Eneasz also wrote that.
I think he's got a good imagination.
He does.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. Yeah, I'm curious. We'll have to pick his brain about where Titus came from. And, I mean, I kind of wonder who he really is underneath. But I think someone like Titus isn't really any of those people, you know, or maybe he's all of them, right? He's in every situation he was in with Andreas, Marcus, or Joah. He's doing really what serves him best and whatever he wants.
Yeah, he has
Like,
no one in mind but himself.
yeah,
At least everyone else could make a case for saying, no, I'm trying to do the right thing here. But Titus was Titus for Titus.
I remember trying to think like when we're working through the story of like, okay, this guy's clearly going to get his or hopefully this guy's going to get his comeuppance. And I was trying to think of what form that would take, and it would have been, I think, I don't know, it would have been narratively satisfying for Joah to best him in a duel or something, but like it would have been implausible enough to be ridiculous. I was like, maybe he'll get him with some clever trap, or
Poison him or
he'll
something.
poison him or antagonize him to the when he knows that Marcus is on his way, and when Marcus sees him crucifying an orangutan or something, he'll get fired and punished or whatever. But I loved his totally ignoble end.
Yep, absolutely
It
great.
wasn't even a weapon.
Nope,
It
brought
was
down
awesome.
by the lowest of the low in the stupidest way. So good.
Yeah, it kind of. I'm sure there's some heavy symbolism there too. Like, not that violence is the solution to all of life's problems. That's probably not the meaning
Moral
there.
of the
It's
story.
yeah, no, it's that there's an equalizer in the fact that everybody's in we all share very similar mortal meat suits.
Mm. And also
And
that when you push someone far enough, like what people will do in desperation, you can only put your boots on their necks for so long before they really will fight back, with deadly force. It's like cornering scared animals, and a scared animal can F you up even if you're bigger than it.
that actually works really well too with the mob against the Roman legions. They were being stretched too thin and whatever, told to go fuck themselves for too long. They said, all right, fuck you, right?
Yep.
No, I think that's definitely a common chord there. Yeah, I think well, I don't know how to say. Eneasz would know Ehud or whatever, his first boyfriend that he had.
Oh yeah, in the village, yes.
Yeah, that flashback that he had. I think a lot of Joah's chapters were dreams, which was kind of cool. Which fits with the title. I think a lot of everybody's, but especially Joah's, it felt like every other one with him had a dream in it. But it was like a dream / flashback, and I guess it wasn't surprising when the guy shows up that he has to join in on the stoning him to death, but it sure was. It was still shocking.
Yeah.
And it still hurt. That's what I really liked with Joah too. Is like maybe it was the first person version of narration, but like I also really felt his. I think I felt everything for every character. Marcus hit me really hard, just the way that it was painted so vividly, the way that he carried the avatar of his dead son in him, right?
That was so good. I mean, that was really the thing that made him made me at all able to connect with him, because all of his schemes and plans, I was so like, dude, this is clearly not the way. And I was so frustrated, but this undying, love for his son and the tragedy of it, and how obviously he really, really cared for him was his redemption for me.
I think that must be I think that must be true for me too. I mean, like his plotting and scheming was merely fun, but it didn't make me like root for him or care about him.
Right.
It was his humanity that you saw there. That I think that was the same thing for me with Marcus. But yeah, with Joah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say he did obviously care about Rome. I mean, it really did feel like he was like, Rome is my city and my love, and I want it to thrive, and I don't want these people to trample it with their hedonism. But he was just too blind to something to see. I just wasn't. I wasn't in line with his methods on solving that problem.
Yeah, but there's nothing really in my life that parallels his love of Rome. You know, like I guess I like my neighborhood, town, state, country, etc., planet, but yeah, I guess yeah. If I zoom out to the entire planet, which is pretty much how Marcus thinks of Rome, I guess I could see myself. I could identify with his whatever manic commitment to its well being, but that just doesn't resonate as on such a personal level as the the loss of a loved one.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. What was I going to say there? Uh, Oh yeah, what was did I never got I guess a clear picture of what the deal was with that Aurelius. Like did he was like that church employee, but like he was explicitly a prostitute that worked for the church or something, or
Yeah, I
did the
wasn't
church
sure.
kind of like look the other way with that and just say, "Oh yes, you're going to go meditate with Aurelius," but they all knew what was up?
Yeah, and it wasn't clear. Like, is he just one of many? For all I know, there were a whole passel of them back there. I don't know, but yeah, it definitely seemed like the church knew what was going on, and it was also a little sad because he clearly was a paid escort, and the fact that Joah had sort of really loved him, and uh, there were a couple times I think when he said like he didn't even ask if Aurelius was his real name because he didn't want to lie to him. So he was in love. He knew it was a fantasy, but he wanted to keep that fantasy. And then at the end, when he was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go. Like, you could come with me," and he didn't even let him get the question out. And he was like, "No, no, no. Just we're just gonna keep this where it is, and don't wish for. I don't remember what he said. Like, don't wish for impossible things, or just be happy. Let's just be happy with what we have or what we had." That was really sad, but it also was more agency that he was, despite trying to feed his animals and they're all like eating cold fish heads for dinner, was still saving enough money to afford to go visit this guy a couple times a month. Was interesting.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to maybe this is something I need to puzzle. Like I mean, I totally get wanting companionship. I think you hit it like with the fact that he knows it's a fantasy, but he clings and he doesn't want to be disillusioned to that. So like you said, he never asks him his real name or asks him if Aurelius is his real name because he wants to be able to cling to the idea like, nope, this is real. And even if he knows that's what he's doing, it's like my life's pretty shitty. If I can just, have some plausible deniability that things are good, in this one aspect, I'm gonna just cling to that. I thought that was identifiable.
I think so too.
Do you remember that this would have been towards the end when his dreams are getting more and more nuts, but he has that whole sequence where he's he's with Aurelius and everything seems normal, and then he's like, "Oh, I guess this is a dream," and he starts like to wake up, and Aurelius like is panicking.
Oh, yeah, and Eneasz has said that he has had a dream like that.
That's what I remember too. Yeah, he told me once about a dream that he had like that with his brother, and that's awful. I've had messed up dreams too, but nothing quite like that. But I had to ask if you ever played Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening.
I have not.
Well, I is it a spoiler if the game is 25 years old?
No, I think it's well, it's fine with me. I don't know who else is listening, but you can
All right. Well,
they probably
spoilers
all
for
play.
Link's Awakening. That's how that game. That's the whole end of that game. Is like as you're working through it, it's like this weird fantasy land that he lands in, and it's distinct from the rest of the series in that like there are people that look like Mario. There's a guy that looks like Santa. Like everything's weird. And as he's working his way through the dungeons, he finally finds like on one of the walls, or I guess you do as the player, Link does, um, like an inscription that this whole island is the dream of the windfish, this entity that exists at the top of the mountain inside this egg or whatever. And if you wake him, the dream ends. And then as you're getting further along, like when you start defeating bosses, because they're standing between you and the instruments needed to wake the windfish, the MacGuffins to finish the quest. Um, they're like pleading with you, like, please stop. We're all going to die. And like you feel it because there's a handful of characters like in the main little town that like you like, and one that travels with you for a little while, like, and she expresses interests of like I wonder what life is like, off this island, and luckily you're not near any of them when you wake the windfish and the game ends. But it was so reminiscent of that, and I don't think Eneasz played that game either.
Mm,
Uh, but and I'm sure the idea, like that the world is a dream. That's not original, but that exact like petrifying fear of like, no, wait, please stop. The world is ending. You're going to kill me.
no.
Um, that was visceral and that was awesome. And of course, devastating, but awesome nonetheless.
Really well written is what it was. The reminded me, I don't know if you ever saw The Good Place. So it's called, yeah, The Good Place. There's like a thing in there where you reboot Janet, and when you get close to this button, she panics and freaks out and starts saying, no, 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 no. And then as soon as you back up like an inch, she immediately calms down. It reminds me of that.
She's like, "Oh yeah, this is my reset button, no problem. But I am programmed that if you get try to reset it, I have to try and convince you not to." And she like pulls up pictures, like, "Please, I'm pregnant. They're yours."
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's it. They played that really well with Janet. I liked and this is so the chapter. What was it? 40, where it was Andreas, Joah, and Marcus.
Oh, they're just all going back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah, I loved that whole scene was like this awesome payoff that I didn't know I wanted, or that I wasn't expecting. It's like it sent shivers down my spine. So I think it starts with Andreas's point of view, and I think it was something like, and the crazy thing is I can see it too, and then it switches to Joah's perspective, and it was just so cool how it jumped back and forth. I mean, I didn't really lose sight of where things were, what was happening. It was clear, and I think maybe that was one of the cool things about using the different perspectives is that you didn't need like whatever section breaks to say I'm back on this character or something.
No, and then Marcus said, and then Joah said, no, it was like the whole book was training you to be able to read this chapter.
Yeah. And it was epic. I mean, and they're like kind of coordinating. They don't understand the connection, but I guess they're God's chosen people.
Yep, the three men that God pays attention to.
Yeah.
Geez, what a like it sounds like that would be an appealing thing, but you read this and you're like, you realize nobody wants that much of God's focus. I think that can only end up being difficult.
Yeah, being a protagonist is rarely an easy job, I think. So yeah, I think that's probably a lot like having God's eyes on you. What's kind of fun is like it makes sense why, like we get why explicitly what happened with Andreas, that the gods are obsessed with him, right?
Yes.
They're like, perfect. So this guy's guilty enough that we can get him to do the right thing when we tell him to. Marcus has enough influence that they don't even have to really push him that hard, I guess. But it's like this guy has such a sweep over Rome and the world that we'll keep an eye on him. But Joah is like the outlier there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why are the gods focusing on him?
I think maybe it's related to what you said about him being so, I don't want to keep using the word agentic, but it's the right word. But his, everyone else kind of just living their lives, and he's living his, but he's living it within the constraints of his circumstance. But he wants to, he's pushing at the barriers of it to find little alcoves of happiness and sanctuary, right?
Yeah, and he's kind of like living his own little mini rebellion the whole time.
That's true. Yeah, totally.
That makes sense. There's not probably a lot of other people at the time who were doing that successfully. That might pull the gods' focus.
Yeah, a lot of other nameless NPCs get killed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think of. I wish the way that we did this with previous books was like we'd read whatever the section's reading was. Initially I had like this plan of doing, one for every day of the story, so I do 7 episodes and reread them all. And then while they're all fresh, but it didn't quite shake out that way. Maybe I'll do a longer version at some point, but I'm trying to remember if anything else I wanted to cover with Joah or the whole story. I wanted just to call out that last, it wasn't the last chapter, but it felt like it. It was at the climax where
really
everything was settling down.
Yeah. I for sure did not put the book down during that. It was a page turner. It was
yeah. It was awesome.
Like a good payoff.
I'm trying to think of any other major beats with Joah that I didn't remember. I mean, he also had a relationship with Eneasz,
mm-hmm.
but it was from a different angle than Andreas's, right? Like she was sort of a peer to him. And what's weird is like I think Andreas kind of saw her as a peer too, but he absolutely wasn't. He's like, no, yeah, we're both beneath the lords and kind of servants, and she's like, yeah, but you get to go home.
Yeah,
like there's a huge difference. I think that maybe that's part of the reason she didn't like Andreas too, was like he never quite grasped that her station was actually worse, right? Maybe I don't know,
but I do think that's why she was annoyed with him at the beginning. And also, I think she saw him as partially on the team of the oppressors. So she was like, "Don't say you're one of us. You work for them."
Right, totally. You're getting paid.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's not a huge distinction. Um, I'm getting paid by not being killed. You're getting paid with money. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's another interesting wrinkle to my, I guess, relationship with this story was a year or a few years before it was published, Eneasz wrote a short story that was like a really, really condensed version of this.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, it's been ages since I read it, but I remembered it was like part of, especially the beginning, felt like some deja vu. Like I remembered the old man summoning the thing in the arena and stuff. Like I'd read it before, but I knew I hadn't. Um, and so some of that stuff was already in there, and I can't remember how that short story ended. Maybe it had a bad ending. Maybe that's why I was so sure this one would too. But no, I mean things worked out. I think for everybody, I mean it's unclear what happens to Marcus exactly. Like he sees his wife get to him, and presumably survives. I guess maybe he'll be emperor. I don't know.
He definitely killed the emperor, or Pontius Pallas, whatever his rival did, right? And then they ended up the emperor was dead, the other Pallas guy was dead.
Yeah, he got to kill Paulus because he hated that guy the whole time, and then he was sure that he orchestrated the death of his son, even though it was, I think, either explicitly or almost definitely Titus.
Yeah, I think it was definitely Titus, and Andreas figured that out.
That's right. Oh yeah, there was that whole subplot that didn't go anywhere, but like it was not like it was whatever left hanging, but it was. I'm sure there's a word for this, and I'm not an English major. There, like Marcus was having Andreas read everything, like read all this correspondence that I have with my son Quintus, and just over and over try to put it in your head as much as possible because he had asked the wizard, "Hey, is there any way to bring my dead son back?"
Mm-hmm.
I'll do whatever it takes. And the guy, I think it was something along the lines of like, sounds like a fun challenge. We'll need a vessel that has God's eyes on him already. So like while he's embodying as much as he can of Quintus, that's when he puts together like, no, it was Titus.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he ever gets a chance to convey that to Marcus.
Mm-mm.
And by the end of Andreas' story, he could give less of a shit of explaining anything to anybody, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
He's done with the whole thing. I don't know. Yeah, that did go a little loosely hanging. So you get the impression that Marcus is going to end up in power because everyone else who was challenging him is dead. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, we can look at it from here and say, well, Rome fell, so it didn't work out. But it's also historical fiction, so we don't know that. It was just I really felt like Marcus's ending was the least satisfying, weirdest. I wasn't sure if I was happy that he survived or not. And it was ambiguous. I don't know, right? Maybe he bled out and she tried to drag him to the hospital and they didn't make it. Who knows? But it was
yeah, maybe he just died having seen her for one last time or something.
Yeah, so it didn't really say. But compared to the other two, I don't know. I liked how they all split off. I would love to be able to ask Eneasz what happened to Andreas. But Joah, who just is like making plans, like that's it. I'm gonna go find my people, and I'm already making some plans, and that is in actuality how you make things better. So I don't know. I was really happy with the end.
Yeah, same. And that's perfectly in character for him. Like that's what he's done his whole life, right? Or as long as we've known him, which is he's looks at his circumstances, like what do I have to do here, and then like finds his priorities and says, okay, cool, I'm gonna go do that. Oh yeah, and he made it like the edge of town earlier on, freeing those wolf pups, which was just again so perfectly him.
So perfectly him. That was great.
I guess I'm trying to think of which one I think had the happiest ending, and I think it's Joah, even though things changed the least for him.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I mean, I guess Andreas is free. He probably felt pretty light and happy as he.
That's true.
That probably felt pretty great.
Yeah, I think he even describes it as I think when he's flying off, like the gods are quiet and he felt at peace or something. But there's a kind of it's not. Well, I mean, I'm trying to use the word stress, but stress has a negative connotation because it's actually a bad thing. But there's actually this burden with not knowing who you are or what your place is, right? Trying to answer the question of like, who am I and who am I supposed to be and what am I supposed to be doing?
I mean, that's all of us every day, I think. But yes.
Well, I mean, yeah. So that's why life's hard, but
Yes.
or that's one of the reasons. But like Andreas, he didn't have that question because he was doing what the gods told him for years. And at the end, he has no connections. He's got no home. He's just like he gets to go. I guess what I'm saying is he has the full weight of that burden. But
Mm-hmm.
Joah knows exactly who he is,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's not stuck with like the I don't know. Again, calling it a burden sounds like a bad thing. It's great that people get to pick who they want to be, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. No,
yeah,
choices are costly and they take resources to make. And yeah, when you have clarity of purpose, you get a lot of stuff done.
yeah. So he gets to just whatever pick up, not right where he left off, because right where he left off got whatever sundered when the Earth split in half. But like his, I don't know, he's going to go back to a better version of his old life, right?
For sure. He could find those two and they could leave town. They could start an animal sanctuary. They could run a circus. They can like they will I get the impression that they will figure it out.
Yeah. No, I like that. Well, I'm trying to think of any other major beats to hit, but nothing's coming to me, which disappoints me because I'm sure when I listen to this, I'm going to be like, oh man, I meant to say these three things. But
Same thing.
well, we can save it for when we talk with Eneasz.
Okay.
Unless I'm more than happy to keep going if you have any other thoughts or anything you want to talk about.
No, I'm going to do the same thing. I think this was great.
All right. Well, it'll be a warm up. We'll drill Eneasz for answers. We won't let him get away with, well, no, it's reader's interpretation. Like, no, fuck that, man. Tell us what happened.
You're right here. Spill it.
Did Marcus die? Is Andreas okay? Does he learn Lovecraftian magic or not? Sounds great. Well, thanks. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, it was really fun. I appreciate you too. This was a good time.
Cool. Well, in that case, I guess we can call it, and we'll be back in a little bit with a conversation with Eneasz.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Steven.